For 50 years, John Wayne was America's hero, the cowboy, the patriot, the man who never backed down. Then in 1971, he sat down for an interview with Playboy magazine and said things that shocked the nation. What happened in that interview changed how America saw him forever, and revealed the complicated truth behind the icon. Chapter 1: The Man Who Became America. John Wayne wasn't born John Wayne. He was Marion Robert Morrison, born in 1907 in Iowa. The nickname, Duke, came from his childhood dog. The name John Wayne came from a studio executive who thought Marion sounded too feminine for a cowboy star. Everything about John Wayne was manufactured, the name, the walk, the voice, even the heroic persona. But over 50 years and more than 170 films, the character became the man. Or maybe the man disappeared into the character. By 1971, even Wayne himself couldn't tell the difference anymore. Wayne built his career playing American heroes. Cowboys who tamed the West. Soldiers who won wars. Lawmen who brought justice. He was never the villain. Never complicated. Never morally ambiguous. He was the good guy, and the good guy always won. Off-screen, Wayne cultivated the same image. He was conservative, patriotic, anti-communist. He supported the Vietnam War when most of Hollywood opposed it. He spoke at Republican conventions. He represented a version of America that many people believed in, and many others had started to question. By 1971, Wayne was 64 years old. He'd survived lung cancer, lost part of a lung, and kept working. He'd won an Oscar for True Grit in 1969. He was at the peak of his fame and influence. He was also about to make the biggest mistake of his career. Chapter 2: Why Playboy? In early 1971, Playboy magazine approached John Wayne about doing an interview. Playboy's interview series was famous for long, in-depth conversations with controversial figures. Previous subjects included Malcolm X, Martin Luther King Jr., and Fidel Castro. Wayne's team advised against it. Playboy was liberal, counterculture, everything Wayne supposedly stood against. But Wayne agreed anyway. Why? Some say it was ego. He wanted to be taken seriously as a thinker, not just an actor. Others say it was defiance. He wanted to prove he wasn't afraid of liberal media. The interviewer was Richard Warren Lewis, an experienced journalist. The interview took place over several sessions in late 1970 and early 1971. Wayne was relaxed, drinking whiskey, smoking cigarettes, despite having one lung. He thought he was talking man-to-man, off-the-record, honest conversation. He was wrong. Every word was being recorded. Every opinion was going to be printed. And Wayne, comfortable, confident, surrounded by yes-men for decades, said exactly what he thought about race, politics, Native Americans, and America's changing culture. When the interview was published in the May 1971 issue, the reaction was immediate and explosive. John Wayne, America's hero, had just exposed beliefs that millions of Americans found shocking and offensive. Chapter 3: The Quotes That Shocked America. The Playboy interview contains statements that are difficult to read today. Wayne expressed views on race that were, even by 1971 standards, deeply problematic. He defended white supremacy. He said he believed in it, until the blacks are educated to a point of responsibility. He described Native Americans in terms that were dismissive and cruel. When asked about the treatment of indigenous peoples in Westerns, he said, "I don't feel we did wrong in taking this great country away from them. There were great numbers of people who needed new land, and the Indians were selfishly trying to keep it for themselves." He made comments about black people that used language considered offensive even then. He opposed civil rights legislation. He suggested that minorities needed to earn equality through education and cultural assimilation, essentially arguing that the problem was with them, not with systemic racism. The reaction was swift. Civil rights leaders condemned him. Younger audiences who'd already been drifting away from Wayne's films now had confirmation that he represented a version of America they were fighting against. Liberal Hollywood, already uncomfortable with Wayne's politics, now had quotes they could point to as evidence of his bigotry. But here's what's complicated: millions of Americans agreed with Wayne. They saw him as brave for saying what everyone was thinking. Conservative audiences rallied around him. His films continued to make money. The controversy made him more beloved to his base, and more hated by his critics. Chapter 4: The Context Nobody Wanted. To understand Wayne's interview, you have to understand the man and the moment. Wayne was born in 1907, raised in the early 1900s when segregation was law and racism was normalized. He came of age in Hollywood during the studio system, which was overwhelmingly white and actively racist. He made his career in westerns, a genre built on romanticizing westward expansion and demonizing Native Americans. For decades, Wayne played characters who killed indigenous people and were celebrated for it. The films never questioned whether this was right. They simply assumed it was. By 1971, America was changing. The civil rights movement had won major legislative victories. Vietnam was dividing the nation. Young people were questioning everything their parents' generation had accepted as truth. And Wayne, who'd built his career on representing traditional American values, suddenly found himself on the wrong side of history. But Wayne didn't see it that way. He thought he was defending timeless principles against dangerous change. He believed the things he said in the Playboy interview were reasonable, even obvious. He didn't understand that the world had moved on without him. This doesn't excuse what he said. But it explains why he said it, and why he was genuinely surprised by the backlash. Chapter 5: The Apology That Never Came. After the Playboy interview exploded, Wayne's team went into damage control mode. Press releases were issued. Statements were carefully crafted. But Wayne himself never apologized. Not really. Not in any meaningful way. In follow-up interviews, he'd say things like, "I was taken out of context," or "people are too sensitive." He'd insist he wasn't racist, he had black friends, he'd worked with actors of all races, he respected everyone. But he never walked back the actual statements. Never said, "I was wrong." Why not? Pride, partly. Wayne had built his entire image on never backing down, never apologizing, never admitting weakness. An apology would have shattered that image. It would have been admitting that John Wayne, the character and the man, was flawed. But there was something deeper. Wayne genuinely believed what he'd said. He'd been raised in a racist society, worked in a racist industry, and spent 50 years playing characters who embodied racist ideologies. The Playboy interview didn't expose a hidden side of Wayne. It exposed the only side there was. The man and the myth had become the same thing. And the myth couldn't apologize without ceasing to exist. Chapter 6: How Hollywood Reacted. Hollywood's response to Wayne's interview was divided along predictable lines. Conservative actors and filmmakers defended him or stayed silent. Liberal Hollywood condemned him, though often carefully. Wayne was still powerful, still bankable, still someone you didn't want as an enemy. Younger actors were more direct. Jane Fonda, already Wayne's political opposite because of her anti-Vietnam activism, called the interview disgusting. Marlon Brando, fresh from his own Oscar protest about Native American representation, said Wayne represented everything wrong with Hollywood's past. Directors started quietly avoiding Wayne. Not because of organized blacklisting, but because his image had become toxic to certain audiences. Films with Wayne attached struggled to get financed if they targeted younger demographics or progressive markets. Wayne responded by doubling down. He made The Cowboys in 1972, another Western. Then, Cahill U.S. Marshal in 1973. He kept playing the same characters, representing the same values, refusing to evolve. Some saw it as brave consistency. Others saw it as stubborn refusal to acknowledge changing times. The Playboy interview had done something irreversible. It had separated John Wayne's audience. You were either with him or against him. There was no middle ground anymore. Chapter 7, The Cancer That Was Always There. In 1964, Wayne had been diagnosed with lung cancer. He'd smoked several packs a day for decades, often on film sets. The cancer cost him a lung and nearly killed him. But Wayne survived, and his survival became part of his legend, the tough guy who beat cancer. But the cancer came back. By the mid-1970s, Wayne was fighting it again. Stomach cancer this time. Then it spread. He underwent surgery after surgery, lost weight, struggled to work. But he kept making movies because that's what John Wayne did. He never quit. The Playboy interview had happened when Wayne was already sick, already fighting for his life. Some friends later suggested that facing mortality had made him more blunt, more willing to say what he'd always thought but had been careful about expressing. Death was coming. Why pretend anymore? By 1979, Wayne was clearly dying. That he made one final film, The Shootist, about an aging gunfighter dying of cancer. The parallels were obvious and heartbreaking. Wayne was playing himself, the old hero facing his final battle, knowing he couldn't win this time. He died on June 11, 1979, at 72 years old. The cancer had finally won. America mourned the loss of an icon, but the mourning was complicated by the interview that had exposed who that icon really was. Chapter 8, The Legacy Nobody Knows How to Handle. After Wayne's death, the question became, how do we remember him? As the hero who defined American cinema for 50 years? Or as the man who expressed racist views in a national magazine? Conservative America embraced him as a martyr. A man who'd been unfairly attacked for expressing traditional values. They named airports, streets, and schools after him. In 1980, Congress authorized a gold medal in his honor. Ronald Reagan called him a symbol of American values. But younger generations, more diverse audiences, and progressive critics couldn't separate Wayne's film legacy from his stated beliefs. Universities refused to name buildings after him. Film retrospectives included disclaimers about his politics. His films were analyzed not as entertainment but as artifacts of a racist era. The debate continues today. In 2019, 50 years after the Playboy interview, it resurfaced in social media discussions about separating art from artist. Can you enjoy The Searchers while knowing Wayne's views on Native Americans? Can you celebrate True Grit while acknowledging his defense of white supremacy? There are no easy answers. Wayne is simultaneously one of cinema's most important figures and one of its most problematic. Both things are true. And Americans still can't agree on which truth matters more. Chapter 9, What the Interview Revealed. The Playboy interview didn't change John Wayne. It revealed him. And that revelation forced America to confront an uncomfortable truth: the heroes we worship often hold beliefs we'd find appalling if we looked closely enough. Wayne spent his career playing characters who conquered frontiers, won wars, and brought order to chaos. Those characters never questioned whether their cause was just. They simply acted with confidence and conviction. That's what made them heroes. But real life is more complicated than westerns. The frontier was conquered through genocide. Wars aren't always righteous. Order often means oppression of those who don't fit the system. And confidence without self-reflection can be dangerous. Wayne understood this, on some level. In The Searchers, his most famous role, he played a racist obsessed with revenge. The film is now considered a masterpiece partly because it exposes the ugliness of its hero's beliefs. Wayne gave one of his greatest performances playing a character whose values were meant to be questioned. But off-screen, Wayne never questioned his own values. The Playboy interview showed a man who'd played complicated characters without understanding the complexity. Or maybe he understood it but chose to reject it, holding on to beliefs that gave him certainty in an increasingly uncertain world. Chapter 10, The Interview's Lasting Impact. The 1971 Playboy interview changed how celebrity interviews were conducted. Before Wayne, publicists controlled media access. Controversial questions were avoided. Stars stayed on message. After Wayne, journalists realized that unguarded moments could define careers. It also changed how we think about separating art from artist. Before Wayne's interview, audiences generally didn't question their hero's personal beliefs. After it, everything became fair game. What actors believed, who they supported, what they said privately, all of it became part of how we evaluate their work. Most importantly, it forced America to reckon with nostalgia. The era John Wayne represented, the Old West, World War II, post-war prosperity. Looks different when you understand who was excluded from that prosperity. Who was killed to create that West? Whose sacrifices weren't celebrated in those war films? Wayne's films are still watched, studied, and debated. But they're understood differently now. The context has changed. The hero isn't so simple anymore. And that's because of one interview in 1971 when John Wayne said exactly what he thought, and America realized that maybe we never really knew who our heroes were. Final cliffhanger. 3 months before John Wayne died in 1979, journalist Barbara Walters requested a final interview. Wayne's publicist initially refused, he was too weak, too sick, too close to the end. But Wayne agreed to do it. The interview was scheduled for 2 hours but lasted less than 40 minutes. Wayne was frail, struggling to breathe, clearly in pain. Walters later said it was the most difficult interview of her career, watching an icon reduced to a dying old man. Near the end, Walters asked about the Playboy interview. 8 years had passed. Wayne was facing death. Did he have any regrets about what he'd said? Wayne was quiet for a long moment. Then he said something that Walters's producers cut from the broadcast. The footage sat in ABC's archives for decades, never aired, almost forgotten. In 2019, a researcher going through old interview tapes found the uncut recording. In it, Wayne's response to the regret question was, "I said what I believed. But I wonder now if I believed it because it was true, or because it was easier than questioning everything I'd built my life on." A man gets to my age, he realizes that most of what he thought he knew was just what he was told to think. But by then it's too late to start over. Walters asked a follow-up, "So you regret the interview?" Wayne shook his head. "I regret that I waited until I was dying to admit I might have been wrong. But I'll never know for sure, will I? I'm too old, too set, too close to the end to figure out who John Wayne would have been if he'd questioned things earlier." The footage was never broadcast because Wayne's estate claimed it violated an agreement that certain topics were off-limits. ABC's lawyers agreed. The tape was sealed. But that moment, Wayne admitting doubt, acknowledging that he might have been shaped by his era rather than by truth, would have changed everything. It would have complicated his legacy in ways that both his defenders and critics might have appreciated. Instead, we're left with the 1971 Playboy interview as Wayne's defining political statement. No nuance. No evolution. No indication that he ever reconsidered his positions. Was that final confession to Barbara Walters real? Or was it a dying man trying to soften his legacy? We'll never know for certain because the footage remains sealed by legal agreements. But here's what we do know: in his final months, John Wayne agreed to an interview specifically to address the Playboy controversy. He said something considered too sensitive to broadcast. And his estate made sure it stayed hidden. What else did Wayne say in those final conversations? Did he apologize for specific statements? Did he double down? Did he explain the context that led him to believe what he believed? The answers exist somewhere in ABC's archives, footage that could change how we understand John Wayne's legacy. Footage that his estate has fought to keep private for over 40 years. The final interview that changed John Wayne forever might not be the famous Playboy interview from 1971. It might be the one he gave in 1979, the one we've never seen. And until someone leaks it, breaks the legal seals, or waits until copyright expires, John Wayne's last words about his most controversial moment remain exactly where he wanted them: hidden from history, protected from judgment, frozen in amber as the eternal hero who never backed down. But heroes who never back down also never grow. Never learn. Never acknowledge mistakes. And maybe that's the real tragedy, not that John Wayne said racist things in 1971, but that he never got the chance, or took the chance, to publicly evolve beyond them. The interview that changed John Wayne forever is the one the world saw. But the interview that might have redeemed him is the one his estate made sure we'd never see.